John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and skipping down verses 14 through 18. And I'll be reading from the NIV. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made that were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that light was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.' Out of his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known."
Thanks, Fred, for that reading. Brennan, for getting our song service ready today, and everybody being willing and flexible and patient and understanding as we make these adjustments. Singing was beautiful. Thank you for lending your voices to that. I pray that God has been glorified and that our hearts have been strengthened as a result. And it's going to be an interesting 8 or 9 weeks as we go through this renovation, but it does remind us how blessed we are with the facilities that we have options. We don't have to move off site if the auditorium isn't available. And it makes great memories. Back in the early days at McDermott Road, when we were in the modular building, after we got on site about 5 months after that, we had to go to 2 services because limitations of the modular building, and we really missed all worshiping together. And so the next fall, the next October, we rented a big circus tent, put it out on the property, rented a bunch of chairs. We did that 2 years in a row. And it was interesting. The first year, thunderstorms blew through. Violent thunderstorms. There was a group of other guys, about 5 of us, that were camping out on Friday night with everything because all the chairs were there, all the PA's equipment was underneath this tent. We were worried about theft, so we agreed we would spend the night out there and just have fun. Well, these storms rolled in, wind picked up. The center pole for that tent was about this big around, and it was coming up off the ground as wind got under that tent. We were grabbing the smaller poles until lightning hit really close by. And there was one that hit really, really close, and so we ran into the modular building, which I may have told you before was 10 trailers that were constructed together, built separately, trucked in separately, put together, EFS exterior around it. And Kim called about that time. It was about 2 in the morning. And she said, "Do you know that there are tornado warnings out?" I said, "It's okay, we're in the trailers now." And she was worried about us being outside. But we survived that. And then the next year, a blue norther came through on Saturday night during the singing we were having. Came through. Sunday morning, everybody was in parkas. It was a lot of fun. So we'll make some great memories as we go through these next few weeks. Robert, have we got the... There we go. There we go. For those of you who haven't been over to the auditorium, that's what it looked like by 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So as Nathan mentioned in his communion thoughts, thanks to all who worked so hard on Sunday night. I never would have dreamed we would have gotten through that quickly with that number of pews out, the carpet out. And again, if you haven't claimed a pew and would like one, you can go put your name on it. As we've started this project, I have come to a greater appreciation for why that carpet has not been replaced in 40 years. It's too much trouble. You got to move 148 pews. And then you got 592 bolts sticking up out of the concrete. that you've got to lay new carpet over, and then you got to move the pews back. So I have become much more understanding for why we're here 40 years later. Progress is being made so quickly. In fact, the framer wasn't scheduled to show up until tomorrow, even though he probably could have gone to work on Wednesday. So he's getting here in the morning. The site manager said by end of day tomorrow, they should have the chalk lines where they need to be. And by this time next week, when you swing by there and peek in, ought to be a whole lot of framing that's gone on. This concept of grace and truth is something that we're going to explore in much greater detail over the next week or two, and I don't mind postponing the full discussion of this at all, because really what we're going to be talking today is how we can extend grace in our community and how we can communicate truth in our community. In Matthew chapter 25, when Jesus has been talking about readiness, and he's given us parables about readiness, the parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the talents. It's all about being ready because we don't know the day or the hour when he's going to come. And then he begins talking to us about how we get ready for that great day in the future when the Lord returns. Verses 31 through 33 of Matthew 25, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he'll sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him. He'll separate one from another, as the shepherd separates sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. And what he begins to describe that distinguishes the sheep from the goats, interestingly, is not what sheep believe versus what goats believe. Not tenets of faith. It's not about the way they think or exactly how they believe. In this scenario, it's related to things that they do, specifically what they do in relation to other people and what they do for other people, namely how they minister to people in need. That was the difference maker. How well they fed the hungry, how well they welcomed strangers and clothed the naked and visited and ministered to the sick and the imprisoned. And he said, all these humble acts of service, when done for others in my name, are things that you have done for me. They are things by which we serve Christ, minister to Christ, and honor him. And it's that time of the spring when we talk about one of the many ministries here at the Broken Arrow Church that gives us the opportunity to do just that. And that's in regard to New Heights Summer Camp, which begins 9 weeks from tomorrow. And this is going to be the 6th summer that this ministry has gone on. And I know that some of you are likely thinking, and I understand the sensitivity, but some of you are thinking, Tim, why do this prime time on Sunday morning? Why take up precious sermon time to do that? And I think really because mainly it's biblical. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 through 25. Let's hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Let's consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the habit of some is, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. One of the reasons for their assembly was so that they could help prepare one another, encourage one another for love and good deeds. One of the reasons for being together is how do we prepare one another for ministry. And that word that's translated stimulate in the New American Standard Translation is translated differently in other translations. How we spur one another on, the NIV says. How we motivate one another, the New Living Translation. How we provoke one another. You may remember that language from the old King James Version. Paraxuno is the Greek verb here, and it's a verb that means to sharpen. And so the word came to mean to use something that has been sharpened for the purpose of urging, poking, prodding, provoking, or irritating. And so if it does irritate you that we're doing this morning, then it's supposed to. It's supposed to irritate you, provoke you, prod you, spur you, move you to action, to works of service and works of love. The Message translates it, let's see how inventive we can be in encouraging love and helping out. Again, Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12, he gave some as apostles, some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, not just so they would occupy these diverse roles, but for the equipping of the saints for works of service to the building up of the body of Christ. And you may begin to wonder, well, exactly when did they do that? When did they equip one another? Well, it had to be when they were together, when they were assembled. And I don't believe it was on Sunday night. I don't believe it was on Wednesday night. I don't think they had special Saturday seminars for that in the first century. I'm assuming it was on the Lord's Day when they were together. So New Heights Summer Camp is something that has become a part of our congregational DNA. It's part of who we are. It's become a part of how we're known in this community. And I remember seeing on a friend's Facebook page last year, they asked the question, what would happen if a congregation adopted a neighborhood? And this is totally unrelated to New Heights. I think they were living in Kentucky and they just threw this out. What would happen if a congregation adopted a neighborhood? Helped them with food, clothes, jobs, invested in their lives, showed them love, commitment in Jesus. And I'm so, in the good sense, the biblical sense, proud of what this congregation does in our community through the food pantry, through the clothing room, through the Helping Hands ministry, and through New Heights. This is something that started in the summer of 2009. It was called 50 Days of Food and Fun, and that has morphed, shrunk a little bit to 8 weeks, 40 days of food, fun, and fundamentals of learning in the form of New Heights Summer Camp. And this is really making a difference in our community. And sometimes congregations are asked the question, if you just disappeared, if your church somehow just got vaporized next weekend, how long would it take your community to notice? If everything that we normally do, if the definition of us is what we do normally in that building on Sunday mornings, out of view of the rest of the community, if we got vaporized next weekend, how long would it take for our community to notice? Well, if you're not doing anything in your community, you could go a long time and nobody not even realizing you aren't there anymore. That can't happen in this community anymore for a number of reasons, including one of which is New Heights Summer Camp. So, it's not just hot breakfast and lunch, it's daily instruction in reading and math and science and computer science. There's this new STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's a unique program. Unique because no one else in our community is doing this. And the reason we do it is because of the text that we noticed in Matthew chapter 25. It's because of what we read in Galatians chapter 6, verses 9 and 10, that we're not to grow weary in well-doing, for in due time we'll reap if we persevere. And as we have opportunity, let's do good to all people, especially to those of the household of faith. But let's do good to all people. Back 5 summers ago, 2009, there were 6,901 meals served. Last year, that was 12,727. A growth in meals served of almost double to children in this community. Enrollment has increased each year, starting with 165 back in 2009. Our capacity this year is going to be 235. And word has spread in our community about what we're doing. And that's why other people are starting to partner with us. And it's wonderful when people out there see what people here are doing in the name of Jesus and for the benefit of other people, and just for reasons of goodwill and charity and humanitarian concerns. Not necessarily that they share our particular faith, but they see what's going on and they want to help. And so we have corporations like Walmart, we've had Arby's, we've had Chick-fil-A, we've had Flight Safety, we've had even other community assistance organizations like Broken Arrow Neighbors and the Community Food Bank want to partner with us in what we're doing during the summer. And like everything else, that takes money. It's going to take about $77,400 this summer to pull off 8 weeks of New Heights Summer Camp. And the congregation provides some of that. We provide some of that. through our tithes and gifts to the Lord. About 17% of New Heights' budget comes from our congregational budget, and that's up from 13%, and I'm grateful for that. 33% is covered by the tuition that the children pay. It gives them an investment. It preserves dignity within those families, that they feel like this isn't just a free ride. I'm investing in my child's moral instruction, in their academic tutoring, in the socialization that's going on within a very, very safe environment. And so they'll pay $10 a week per child, plus a registration fee of $10 as well. So you can register your child for $10 a week. $90 covers you per child for the summer then. And that tuition covers 33% of the budget. The USDA reimburses us for those meals, and that makes up about 18% of that budget, a total of 68%, which leaves 32%. And 32% of that $77,000 number is about just shy of $25,000. So that's why you'll see that in the bulletin today. That $25,000 is made up through individual contributions, grants, other things that might be available to us. I'll ask the brothers, if you will, to pass those sheets out right now, and I'm going to keep talking through this whole thing. Again, the reason we're doing this while we're together is it would take us till halfway through next year to get you all together in little groups to do this, to get this accomplished, so that the time to do it is now. What we'll be asking you to do on these forms is just print your name and sign your name to say, yeah, I was there and I heard Tim say all this. That's the training that the Summer Food Service Program requires. And please fill one of these out, whether you intend on volunteering or not. It may be that you just don't know you're intending to volunteer yet. And so once you figure that out, that's great, and we will have already covered this territory. Maybe weeks before you figure out that you're going to be involved, you'll have already done this. I'm going to run through this really quickly. Brennan, where are we time-wise? What time you got? Where's the clock? This is a church, isn't it? Put it where the preacher can see it. All right. You know the Remember Lot's wife story? Okay. I won't go over that with you. Don't look back. We can get this done. All right? New Heights is divided into the Summer Food Service Program, the Summer Enrichment Program. The purpose is to ensure that low-income children continue to receive nutritious meals when school's not in session. And we qualify as an open site because not just 50%, but most recent figures from Broken Arrow Public Schools lets us know that 67% of the children across the street at Rhodes qualify for free or reduced price meals during the school year. So that means that this summer, and I think we're still equipped to serve about 300 children a day, anyone under 18 can come to our facility this summer, get a hot breakfast, get a hot lunch. We prepare that here. It's not prepared elsewhere and brought in to be served. We do that here. And the USDA has some minimum requirements for us. For breakfast that we serve, or there are 3 things that we have to serve in order to be reimbursed for. It's food items, a serving of fruit and vegetable, a serving of bread or bread alternate. I guess manna would be a bread alternate. Somebody mentioned manna this morning. Serving of fluid milk. And this thing down at the bottom, offer versus serve, there's going to be another breakfast item offered, and we make that a protein. But in order to be reimbursed, they only have to choose 3 of those 4, and we still get reimbursed. And it cuts down on food waste. So we're not making them take all 4 and then they just don't eat it and throw it away. So this is all good stuff. So they just have to take 3 of those 4 items. For lunch, 5 items are offered: serving of meat, 2 servings of fruit and vegetable, a serving of bread or bread alternate, 1 serving of fluid milk. And again, they just have to take 3 of those 5. All kinds of record keeping has to go on. Operating costs, labor costs, funds accruing to the program, beginning and ending inventory, food donations, training documentation like we're doing this morning, visits and reviews. And as these kids go through the line every day, every morning and every lunchtime, there's somebody at the end making sure they got 3 items. at breakfast and making sure they got 3 items at lunch so that it qualifies to be reimbursed. So number of complete meals served to children, any adults who come and choose to pay for a meal, the seconds that are served, excess meals, leftover food. Non-reimbursed meals are those where you just couldn't get the kid to take 3, and he comes away with 2. And he still eats those 2 things, we just don't get reimbursed for that one. Non-discrimination statement, you've seen this before. Broken Arrow Church of Christ is participating in the summer food service program. Meals will be provided to all children without charge and are the same for all children, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability. There will be no discrimination in the course of the meal service. Something else we need to be reminded of, and this just isn't for New Heights, folks. This is for every day. This is for every week of every year. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you'll know how you should respond to each person. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. We're not just concerned about getting in food in kids' stomachs and getting academic knowledge into their minds. We're interested in being light and salt for Jesus Christ and being light and salt in this community. And so even though they may be strangers to us, we treat them in the way that we would want to be treated, and we speak to them in the way we would want to be spoken to. And if on a particular day you're not feeling up to that and something needs to be said to somebody, and you'll see on that form, unauthorized adults, when somebody's here that really shouldn't be here, or going through the food line and they need to be paying but they're not, use grace in your speech when you approach them. If you're just having a bad day and aren't up to that, ask somebody else to talk to them. I've had days like that, and yeah, I'm the guy who unfortunately told a kid to shut up the first year, and Melissa Gillen assured the family that couldn't have happened because they were in a session during that hour with TimPyles, and TimPyles would never ever tell a kid to shut up. And I had to own it, and I had to apologize, and it was I haven't told a kid to shut up since then. That was 5 years ago. I'm doing really well. Once again, Colleen Deathridge is the administrator and monitor, and she is responsible for these pre-operation and first-month visits. Holly Parker is stepping into the role that Melissa Gillen filled so beautifully the last few years, and we know Holly is going to do a great job as well. Judy Goodnight is the site supervisor and food production manager. And I'm not going to cover all this. I just want you to see all the slots that have already been filled. And the great thing is that all these people are certified educators or education majors with classroom experience. And that's tremendous that we've got there. As you can see, there's a few slots that need to be filled. And there are other volunteer needs. We need 5 kitchen crews of 3 people. That way you're just working 1 day a week. And you're asked to be here from 7:30 to 2:30. And if you've got a couple of friends and you want to serve as a kitchen crew and work 8 days this summer, that would be wonderful. We need group volunteers and group floaters. We need an art coordinator and a music coordinator. Those last 2, it's just 1 day a week. It's all day. You'll be tired. You'll have 7 classes, but it's just 1 day a week. Over the last 5 summers, we have served 48,753 meals to children in our community. I took the time, just because I had the time, to figure out that's 3 meals a day for somebody for 16,251 days. That's 3 meals a day for 44 and a half years. Is there a man who would like to stand up and not be ashamed to admit he's 44 years old? I need an approximately 44-year-old man to stand up. Are you that young? You are a youngster, Robert Michael. All right. Imagine you being fed 3 times a day your entire life up to this point. You do realize that. All right. That's a lot of food over 44 and a half years. So that's it. If you would pass have those already been passed back in? All right. If you didn't pass those back in yet, just leave them on your seat. And before we close, just another logistical matter. When we're dismissed to Bible classes, put if your songbook's on the floor, put it back up in the seat. Any extra cards, papers, get those up off the floor, put them in the seats when you leave, and that'll make cleanup so much easier. The reason we're doing this is because we're seeking to walk in the steps of Jesus. A Lord and Savior who loved children, who embraced children, who welcomed children, and got onto people when they tried to keep them away. And he was concerned for the body, he was concerned for the soul, and we seek to walk in his steps. And I hope, New Heights is 9 weeks away, but today is the day we need to be walking in his steps. Tomorrow is the day we need to be walking in his steps, 365 days a year. And maybe we need to be called to more serious discipleship. If we once made a commitment to Jesus and we've gotten distracted with a whole lot of other things. If you've never made that decision, you need to walk in his steps in doing what he did. The only person who ever walked this earth who didn't need to be baptized was, I think, to set an example for us. He said it's to fulfill all righteousness. Whatever that meant for him, I accept it by faith. But if you haven't followed in his steps in that regard and want to make that known, we will get you to water. We can't get you to that water, but we will get you to water this morning, I promise you. And as you confess Jesus Christ, we'll immerse you in his name, the name of the Father, the name of the Holy Spirit. We're going to have shepherds up here as we stand and sing this song together. If you need to respond, we ask that you do. Let's stand and sing.